Hi, you are watching SightsIn Plus, and this is Romesh Shivas. Please do subscribe the channel for the HR news, for HR updates, and conversation with the top-notch CHROs, thought leaders, and business heads. Today, we are going to dive deep employer value proposition (EVP), and especially in the current paradigm of human resources HR 5.0. HR 5.0 means we are talking about the hyper-personalized with the seamless integration of technologies. Joining us, Ms. Sahana Shankar. She is a director, Human Resources, India and Asia Pacific regions with the Tech Greek Technologies. And Mr. Sahil Nayar, a renowned HR thought leader. So, my first question that would be that, according to you, what is EVP when we talk about in current paradigm of human resources in HR 5.0? And what are the major elements, key drivers of this effective EVP?
So I'm Sahana, and it's a very interesting topic that we're talking about. EVP stands for Employee Value Proposition, and this is one of the very critical aspects of an organization's talent management strategy. And this basically defines what an employee can expect in return for their skills, capability, and experience that they're going to bring to an organization. And EVP encompasses certain critical elements, and these are the elements that make a EVP very, very strong. And it starts with very, very fundamental aspects like compensation, what kind of benefits do you give, how do you look at career, how do you look at career development. There's a lot of emphasis around work life balance, what kind of policies, practices that can support like a healthy balance between work and personal life. EVP also emphasizes lots about company's culture, values, what kind of purpose do you have, how do you look at managerial development, leadership development, rewards, recognition, what kind of culture do you have to recognize, what mechanisms are in place to appreciate and acknowledge the work that any employee is doing at workplace. And I would say in the last few years, there's a lot of emphasis around diversity and inclusion. So at a very broad level, these are certain themes that make an EVP very, very strong. And typically every organization would want to make a very compelling EVP and align the EVP to organization strategic goals and ensure that we're really able to bring out a strong value proposition on why you need to work with us and what does this brand stand for. So that those are my thoughts.
Sahil, I would like to know your take on this. And as Sahana very beautifully explained, that this includes maybe the compensation as well, the other benefits, work-life balance, so many things. Sometimes we also get confused between employee experience, total rewards, and EBP. It would be great if you can also clarify that how it differentiates, how it is different from employee experience and also the total reward.
I think Sahana has covered it very, very beautifully and touched upon almost all aspects of EVP. And I don't think there's anything significant that I could add to that. But Romesh, I'll pick up your second question. And I think many a times it gets very confusing because total rewards or compensation becomes a subset of EVP. But I want to take a step back. And as I take a step back, I want to share with all your viewers that EVP essentially is what you stand for. What is the value proposition that you want to offer to your employees, not just to attract them, not just to engage them, but also to retain them? So, which means to the entire employee life cycle, what is that brand promise that you are making to a candidate or to an employee? And that could have various elements to it. It could have an element of diversity, like Sahana mentioned. It could have a component of compensation, total rewards, so on and so forth. But many a times we end up confusing one with the other, because if we say that we want to be an employer of choice, we should be very competitive when it comes to compensation. But the question is, that may be a great lever to attract talent into your organization. Is it also a great lever to retain talent in the organization? And therefore, the fundamental question that is poised before all of us is then, what is EVP? I think if I have to summarize EVP from my understanding, from the way I look at it, I think three things. Number one, what's that brand promise you're making to all stakeholders? Be it right from the beginning, from a candidate, a potential candidate, all the time to your alumni, people who've left your organization, and they still are your brand ambassadors after leaving the organization. Number two, what are your components of EVP that come alive when there is a people experience element to the entire EVP? So, as an employee goes through their life cycle, what are the various touch points where they can experience the EVP, right? And number three, most important, how is it that in moments of crisis or moments of difficulty or moments when you're in the doldrums, you still stand tall on your EVP and don't become fair weather EVPs that suit you when it works well and don't suit you when it doesn't work well. So I think, Romesh, that's in a sense what my interpretation of EVP would be. And of course, total rewards is a lot to do with compensation, is to do with benefits, is to do with accruals, which is just one small element of the overall brand promise called EVP.
I think very insightful responses, Sahil. Sahil, one thing is very important that when we talk about the EVP, so this is also kind of the statement by the company when we're trying to attract the talent in a market. But before this, you create your EVP. It is also very important to understand that what is the expectation of workforce in the market. That is, there is also shift in expectations of talent from the organization. How do you see in current paradigm? What are the expectations of talent from the organizations?
I think multiple, Romesh, because post COVID, we have seen tectonic shifts that have happened by not just potential candidates, but even existing employees from their organization, right? I think the whole focus, which was earlier on input metrics, today has moved to output metrics. What was earlier punch in, punch out, 8 hours a day, today is saying in 24 hours, tell me which 8 hours are you going to work. Of course, many organizations are no longer hybrid and they've come back to the office. But the flexibility on saying you want to come an hour late, leave an hour later, that's absolutely fine as long as work gets. I think the whole recognition and sensitivity to the fact that we are human beings first and employees second has taken center stage. Number two, I think the sensitivity towards exigencies that people might have has also been built in. But I think with all of this flexibility, what shouldn't be taken away is a sense of responsibility and ownership. So we see many a times that when employees have a sense of belonging, they will end up putting the amount of hours needed to complete a particular task or achieve a particular goal as compared to someone who will find an alibi to say, hey, you know what, I got to attend to this, I got to attend to that. And in all of this, many organizations are finding it difficult to crack the code on EVP because the question is, how much is enough? How much should of flexibility should I give which makes me a great employer versus how much flexibility should I not give, because if I give too much flexibility, I'm actually spoiling the decorum and the discipline and the ethos and the culture of the place. So I think fundamentally recrafting EVP post COVID is extremely important, that allows for individuals to bring their individuality to work, that allows for people to display flexibility yet be able to be in a space where they take ownership for outcomes. And third and most important, being in a space where you don't need to moral police an adult, but you start treating adults like adults because at the end of the day they have signed up for a particular job.
Very true. Sana, first I would like to know your stand on that. What are the expectations of talent from the organization? Second, also I would like to add here that sometimes, yeah, this is kind of a statement from the organization to the talent that what they're offering. But many times you see these are also kind of aspiration of the organization. In reality, they're not doing that. That is, this should be. So that balance is also very important. What is your take on this?
Sahil put it really well. I always say that, all of us are experiencing an era which is post-COVID, which has gone through a huge transformation. In a way, was COVID a blessing because it pushed us to really redefine how do we look at workforce, how do we look at workplace. I think both have got redefined. Just to add into in terms of where organization and talent are trying to find a fine balance, apart from flexibility and few aspects that Sahil mentioned, one has really seen a real uptake for skilling and upskilling. So today's talent that's coming in is really keen to know what does my role really entail, what value add I'm going to do, and what am I really going to learn from this role. One of the critical questions that I've seen talent asking, when I'm in a lot of discussion, what customer problem I'm solving, and that gives them excitement to do good meaningful quality work. And I think organizations have really been redefining saying how do we make every role more meaningful, give them good quality work, because I feel that's the core of anything. While in the periphery we may have compensation, flexibility, remote working, but the core is about what you're doing every day in and day out. I think that for sure has been getting redefined extensively. The second big area I see because of COVID, I think emphasis on well-being and mental health. I think every individual has become more conscious on what you eat, how do you take care of your health, and especially, whether you're in a metro, non-metro, traveling, coming back, or you're remote, where there's hardly any interaction beyond just a Teams or a Zoom call. So I think the talent has also been asking us saying what would you do to support mental health, what would you do to ensure that there is enough of support system coming in from a wellness program. It could be a master health checkup that organizations want to sponsor, wellness leaves that have come in. I think that's the second area that I would say has seen a huge shift. And third, we're seeing is a word called ERG, where we're talking about sustainable ethical practices. So I want to talk about two, three examples. Like very, very common practice is to give like an annual gift, give an onboarding welcome kit. Organizations have really moved and saying, how can I really look at sustainable products? Which are really made from, earth friendly, nature friendly products. I would say a lot of emphasis around sustainable practices across, whether it is in terms of getting the right suppliers, right practices for employees. So I think that is another big area. And the last one I would say is enough of autonomy. I think the generation that is existing plus the generation that's coming into workforce is talking extensively about empowerment, autonomy. Can I make my own decision? How much of an autonomy is a good autonomy? I think those are the areas that organization and the workforce are really looking at.
Sahil, would like to add here something?
Yeah, Ramesh, just 2 cents from my side. I think your question was very specific on the gap between what organizations talk as far as their EVP is concerned and what they actually end up doing, right? And I think we've come to an age where employees today have a voice that is not just within the organization, but a voice that's on social media. And whether employers and organizations like it or they don't like it, whether they regulate it or they don't regulate it, the point still remains that discretion is still with the employee. Of course, there will be consequences, there will be ramifications of crossing the line, but the choice is with the employee. And today, whether it be Glassdoor, whether it be Fishbowl that allows you to be anonymous, organizations are forced to look at such platforms because their ratings, their credibility, walking the talk is all getting measured, not just by all press releases or paid publications or advertisements, but also what employees are saying. And therefore, what people today are looking at achieving is a congruence between what they are projecting out as an organization and, on the other hand, what their employees are speaking in their natural market, which is with their friends, with their ex colleagues, so on and so forth. And the moment there is that congruence, is when you know that they are actually living the EVP or they are living their promise. Vis a vis, as you mentioned, potential gap between doing great advertising, but internally employees wondering, when did this happen? I've never heard of this. Oh, I got to know from social media. Oh, I got to know from TV, or I saw an ad in the newspaper. I never heard of this initiative within our organization, just as an example, right? And therefore, I think it's high time that organizations take cognizance of this, because there is an alternate economy that's running in parallel, which is the creator economy that is out there voicing their opinion either anonymously or publicly.
Right, absolutely. Now, after the overview of the EVP, we would like to, go towards how we can create a powerful EVP, especially in this paradigm of human resources. So generally, we talk about have some audit of the current EVP program. Then you can compare with the also some of the competitors. You can also take the feedback from employees and then try to analyze the data. But it's not as so simple. How you will get the feedback from employer, this is a task and this is not very easy. How you will analyze this data with the competitor, with the company, and where's the gap? What is the process? How we can do it in a right way? Sahana, what is your take on this?
Defining an EVP, as you said, is a very critical element, and there are multiple ways through which you can do. And I want to bucket it under two aspects. One is the inside out perspective, wherein, as Sahil mentioned, in terms of hearing your own employees, and the other is the outside in perspective, saying what's the noise outside, because today is a world where everything is on social, so you just cannot say that I'm only listening to what's happening within, but I need to keep one ear open to what's happening outside as well, because that also impacts and defines in terms of, are we really living through our EVP? So fundamentally, we have heard this word called the engagement survey. So there's certain basics that organization would do is, have some data and metrics through an engagement survey. It could be annual, biannual. Organizations do pulse survey just to get what's the pulse. And through some of these surveys, you get aspects of EVP in terms of, when we typically see like a word cloud, there are feedback that comes in. There is data to say that, are we really investing on training? Are we really enabling career growth, promotion? Is there a culture of recognition? So there could be specific questions that address some of the aspects of EVP. And through that, we can get data. There's always an exit data, that gives a lot of insights. There's stay interviews, which organizations believe, and those who've been used to an HR business partner kind of an aspect will understand that we organizations do a lot of one-on-ones. They do focus group discussion. There are leadership insights that come in. We have also heard about organizations who have evolved on a daily basis. They track your happiness index, so that again can give you some insights in terms of how happy I am today and why am I not happy today. Did something happen at the workplace? And then organizations want to really look at getting in AI, ML, a lot of analytics into it. Today I would say HR has really invested in building an HR analytics function. So you want to sit on wealth of data, analyze some of these data and say what is really emerging as a strength for the organization. How do we double up on those areas, and what's really an area that we're not doing well based on data? While all of this happens internally, I think externally, I think Sahil already mentioned, whether it is LinkedIn, Glassdoor, there are multiple other platforms. And of course, organizations also look at doing a compensation benchmarking, benefits benchmarking. You can yourself, take it in an internal assignment and do some benchmarking study to see what is happening in the external world, and where is a gap. If our competitors are offering something and we do not have that as a part of our value proposition, is that something that will align with company's purpose? Does that align with our goal? And would we be open to incorporate some of those aspects to really define a strong EVP? So I think these are some of the methodologies. And again, depending on organizations who have budgets, they do bring in a brand consultant on board who helps in terms of really looking at what is brand, Duck Creek brand, whatever is your company brand, what does that stand for, and what are internal employees as well as candidates talking about your brand. What does this brand stand for? So some of the organization go and ask candidates as well, like, why did you choose to apply for us? What excited you? And that can again help in strengthening and redefining the EVP.
Sahil, what is your take on this?
I think Sahana has put it very, very beautifully and touched upon all the aspects of whether it's an inside out approach or an outside in approach. Or maybe just don't want to, at the cost of repetition, but maybe just draw an analogy, right? I think when you go and curate an EVP, a certified design thinker like myself would keep the user in the center. And here there's not just one user, there are multiple users. So you will actually sit and create user personas. So your employees could be one user of the EVP. Candidates could be one. You could have multiple such approaches to looking at an EVP from different stakeholder perspectives, and therefore you will have to look at each persona differently. But the analogy that I would like to draw is think of this like going to a buffet, right? From a buffet, you need to come down to a thali, right? So buffet is unlimited. You have a lot of widespread. At times it can get confusing what you want to have, what you don't want to have, but there is so much of variety. A thali is like a fixed menu, but yet in there. And then from a thali, you got to move to an a la carte, right? So if Romesh likes butter chicken, there has to be butter chicken exactly the way Romesh likes it on the platter. Because today we're living in a world where we have 5 generations in the workforce. You have somebody who is in their 70s, 80s, a senior advisor, good in health, sharp mind, willing to contribute a couple of hours a day. You can't discount them. They're extremely valuable. They've had a space where if they had a problem with someone, at best, they would go and talk to the individual and discuss the problem. Whereas they are today interacting with a 20-year-old who at the end of a meeting may just go and put something on Twitter or X and say, hey, met my grandfather at work and he started giving me gyan, right? And now this person is going to get a 40-year-old come and say, hey, see, this person in your team just wrote this, and this person is going to get flabbergasted and say, what the hell? Come and talk to me, right? What are you going on Twitter and putting it out? And then that is getting 10,000 hearts and 450 retweets in 5 minutes. So that is like mind blowing for an 80-year-old. Therefore, coming back to the point, when you have 5 generations at the workplace, curating an EVP for a multi generational workforce is never easy, because everybody has a different level of interest, everybody has a different persona, everybody has a different taste, likes, dislikes, so on and so forth. And therefore, in all of this, I would say a 3-pronged agenda. Go with the buffet, come to the thali, and then go for a la carte. Of course, we don't have enough time, but otherwise, I would be very happy to break this down and what it really means for an organization to apply an equivalent of a buffet, an equivalent for a thali, and an equivalent for an a la carte.
Yeah, I think very beautifully you have explained, Sahil. You talked a lot about the personalization. You talked about that the purpose is not only to attract the talent, the purpose is also to retain them. So that's where the experience counts. So how do you see when we are talking about the personalization and individualization, how the technology can help in this regard, so that we can offer the better EVP, so that we can also attract and we can also retain the talent.
I think, Romesh, sorry for this, but I love analogies because I think that's the best way to explain a concept. And to answer your specific question, I'll pick up one more example, right? Think of an EVP like an orchestra. There is a maestro who is just playing the orchestra, getting the entire orchestra to come together. And you would have almost 15 to 20 different musical instruments in an orchestra, from someone playing the piano to the violin to the guitar to the sitar to the harmonium to the drums, all of that. Now, isn't the drums by themselves a beautiful musical instrument? Of course they are. Just an electronic guitar can be absolutely amazing. And therefore, what we need to understand is every user persona in today's corporate world is a musical instrument. Do not try and kill their individuality by letting one instrument overpower the other, but instead let them retain their individuality but play to their strengths. So when you're going on a high note, let the right musical instrument play the high note. When you need the flute to come in at the right time, Let the flute come in at the right time. And that is the beauty of a very strong EVP, a very strong CEO, a very strong HR head, a very strong leadership team that exactly knows, as the person, as the maestro at the orchestra, to know how to get the best of each musical instrument. And together, you have a beautiful symphony.
Yeah, if I may just come in with maybe two, three examples, I think very beautifully put in terms of, an orchestra. Just two, three example that comes to my mind because personalization is an area I think we as HR community is trying to see how do we get that balance. As I said, it's a multi-generational workforce. So let's take an example that I think one of the culture that we all are seeing around ourselves is a culture of being a pet parent. Now, I have seen in organizations where, those who are pet parents would probably want a leave, which is for taking care of their pets. Now, there's also a workforce that we have, which is never a pet parent, and they cannot probably relate to this culture of, being a pet parent. Now, how do we really address this ask? So, would we want to look at a leave, tell them that if you're a pet parent, you take it again, just an example. And then insurance is a classic case. And I'm sure, Sahil, you would have heard. So, as you age, we've had so many instances where they come back and say, I have aging parents to take care. Can the insurance coverage go up? But that may not be a big ask from a workforce which is just fresh out of campus, just getting into, their expectation from a workforce is very, very different. If you just look at training and development again, those who've been tenured, been there, done that, their expectation in terms of what training, what is learning for them is very, very different. Vis-a-vis somebody who's fresh from campus, we want to groom them very early on. Probably we look at a young leadership program. There's a top management, we really want to look at a different kind of a training offering. There are women who are in the workforce, they need a different kind of a training altogether to help them really grow, be successful. So I would say, I think organization, HR, I think we all have really been pushing the envelope in terms of personalization. Some of the organizations have really, gone there, been there, done that. I think some of us are still getting there in terms of what is that balance, right? You can't really go all out and really, like as Sai said, give you the exact butter chicken, exact flavor that you want may not be possible. I just cannot customize it to an extent that this is what is for you. Maybe, we're trying to see what could be a fine balance. I think those are two, three examples I thought I could share.
Very insightful, Sana. Sahib, any of your concluding remark? Maybe we have discussed all the points, but maybe something we did not touch, and that is very important.
I think Sahana put it nicely to say that you may not be able to give Romesh the butter chicken that he wants, but at least don't give him paneer tikka and tell him it's butter chicken, right? Because the gravy looks similar. Remove the paneer, remove the chicken, and say, oh, the gravy is the same, and therefore enjoy it. Because your employee today very well understands what is real butter chicken and what is not. So please don't do that. Don't try and fake it till you make it. It's all a journey. Rome wasn't built in a day. And therefore, as long as your intent is in the right place, you're putting in the right amount of efforts, people will appreciate that. But don't fake it till you make it. That's my only request on the EVP front.
Any of your final comments, Sana?
Yes, I think I would only say that EVP is going to be ever evolving, considering that it is an employee driven market that we're living in. The way I look at EVP getting evolved is it's going to be more personalized, more holistic, and lot more technology driven. We just cannot avoid technology penetrating every aspect of HR. So I think
Right.
this will continue to be a critical framework
Thank you
as we
so much,
continue.
Sahana and Sahil, for joining us and sharing your wonderful thoughts. Thank you so much.